Now take a look at this. You got Tiffany Hayes driving to the rim. And watch, here goes DiJonai Carrington right here. Here goes DiJonai Carrington. Watch her. You're nowhere near the ball, dude. You are nowhere near the fucking ball. Like, stop. Can we stop with this? Can we stop with this already?
That is the play that changed this from one controversial foul into a much bigger question. How many shots to the head can pile up before people stop calling them isolated accidents?
Okay, you swing at the ball, but then you hit her all in the face with your other hand, and then you put your hands up like you didn't do nothing. You hitting her all in the face. Look at this. Watch her left hand. The right hand right here went to the ball. Watch this left hand. Like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing, man? What are you doing?
And that is why this conversation is getting louder. On that sequence, one hand is contesting the basketball, while the other makes contact with the opponent's face. You can argue about intent all day, and intent matters when officials decide how severe a penalty should be. But viewers are not reacting to one frozen frame anymore. They are looking at the accumulation. That distinction is important, because calling somebody a dirty player is an opinion. What we can actually examine are the individual plays, the contact, the officiating decisions, and the public reaction afterward. And later, that becomes the real story here, because Dave Portnoy did not just criticize DiJonai Carrington's physical play. He argued that Carrington herself changed the entire conversation when she took what could have remained a basketball controversy and turned it into something much more explosive.
And even Jason Whitlock saw it and he said, out of the league. Get her out. Get her out. Get her out of the league. Look at her. Get this woman. This is two separate clips he's responded to. He said, get this woman out of basketball. Get her out of here, man.
Jason Whitlock clearly has no interest in giving Carrington the benefit of the doubt. His reaction is basically the maximum possible punishment. Get her out of basketball. That is one end of this debate. But the more interesting question is whether the league has actually reached a point where stronger discipline is justified. Because basketball is physical, chase-down contests are dangerous by nature. Players move at full speed, bodies collide, hands miss the ball, and sometimes somebody gets hit in the head without anybody planning it. If every ugly replay automatically proved malicious intent, half the league would eventually be labeled dirty. The problem for Carrington is that once several controversial clips exist, every new one gets interpreted through the previous ones. The audience is no longer evaluating a blank slate. They remember Sophie Cunningham. They remember Caitlin Clark. They remember the hair pull sequence. They remember other hard contests. So even a play that might receive more benefit of the doubt from another player instantly becomes part of an existing narrative. That is how reputations form in sports, fairly or unfairly. And right now, Carrington has a reputation problem.
Come down with long fingernails, gouge somebody. She's had multiple instances of chasing people down from behind, trying the same swat and smashing them in the head and causing many fights. She pulled another girl's hair. I don't know if we'll get to that clip in a second when she's falling.
Look at this. Look at all of this. Oh, like she pulling Sarah Ashley. Now, Sarah Ashley Barker's feet wasn't even on the floor at the time. Sarah Ashley Barker was airborne when she got pulled out of the air by her ponytail. By this dirty ass.
That clip is especially significant because it is different from a normal shot block attempt. Sarah Ashley Barker is airborne. Carrington reaches toward the back of her head, and the replay appears to show contact with the ponytail as Barker is coming down. Again, people can debate exactly what Carrington intended in the moment. But this is where the defense of "she just plays hard" starts becoming harder to sell to viewers who have now seen several different categories of controversial contact. This is not one type of play repeated over and over. The criticism includes facial contact on contests, collisions around the rim, the Barker hair sequence, and then the Cunningham incident that pushed this story into another stratosphere. And that matters because leagues do not only manage fouls, they manage player safety and perception. If fans begin believing dangerous contact is being tolerated, every future incident becomes a referendum on officiating. That puts the WNBA in an uncomfortable position. Punish Carrington more aggressively, and some people will say the league is reacting to outside pressure. Do nothing beyond normal in-game penalties, and another section of the audience will say the league is ignoring an obvious pattern. There is no clean public relations exit once the controversy reaches that stage.
In the WNBA, this is a totally fine reaction, I think, to a play like that. And maybe the story ends there if Carrington doesn't go to the locker room, pick up her phone, and tweet white privilege, which is insane, an absolutely insane.
And this is where Portnoy changes the argument. He is basically saying the ejection itself could have stayed inside basketball. A hard foul happens. Officials review it. Carrington gets tossed. Fans debate whether it deserved a flagrant 1 or flagrant 2. Everybody screams for 24 hours, and then the schedule moves on. But Carrington's white privilege post made that impossible. Now the argument was no longer simply, was the foul excessive? It became, why does Carrington believe race had something to do with what happened? And once that door opened, every commentator covering the incident had a choice. Address that post directly, ignore it, defend it, criticize it, or shift the discussion back toward basketball. That is why this story survived far beyond the original whistle.
In talking about whether it was the right call and things of that nature, and they don't even mention the fact that she said white privilege. That is the story. The story isn't that she got kicked out. It's that she tweeted out white privilege as though because Sophie Cunningham is white, somehow that's why she got kicked out. They go on to defend her, the story, the narrative that she's not.
Portnoy's frustration there is not subtle. His argument is that television discussion focusing only on the officiating misses what he sees as the event that transformed the controversy. And he has a point about chronology. The foul happened first. The ejection followed. Then came Carrington's public post. Whatever somebody thinks about Carrington, Cunningham, the officials, or the surrounding political arguments, that sequence matters. Because once an athlete publicly attaches a racial interpretation to a disciplinary moment, the media cannot act surprised when the audience begins discussing race. That does not mean every criticism of Carrington is automatically fair. It does not mean every person entering the conversation is motivated purely by basketball, and it certainly does not mean people should be allowed to turn criticism of a player into personal abuse. But it does mean the racial dimension did not appear from nowhere. Carrington publicly introduced it. And now we get to the most revealing part of this entire controversy, the fight over who supposedly started the culture war around the WNBA.
Now, where this thing gets absolutely bananas is when you start making it into a race and culture war, and the people talking about it are not mentioning 99% of the time that she went back and tweeted white privilege. White privilege how? You made a dirty play. Sophie Cunningham, everyone's putting up clips of her like tackling a player on a drive, defending Caitlin, you say. Well, she got kicked out of the game for that too and didn't say anything.
That is the hinge. Portnoy is separating two arguments that keep getting mashed together. The first is basketball. Was Carrington's play excessive, reckless, or dirty? The second is cultural. Why did the incident become framed around race and politics? Those are related now, but they did not begin as the same argument. The basketball question can be examined with video. Where was the ball? Where did the arm land? What did officials call? Is there a history of similar contact? Those are normal sports questions. The cultural questions started exploding once white privilege appeared, and this is where both sides often talk past each other. Carrington's defenders can argue that she receives disproportionate scrutiny and that physical WNBA players have existed forever. That is a legitimate topic. If somebody believes she is being judged differently than other aggressive defenders, they can make that case with comparisons. Critics can also say her own post invited scrutiny of race into a basketball ejection. Those two ideas can exist simultaneously. The existence of overheated criticism does not erase the contents of her post, and the existence of her post does not automatically validate every attack made against her. That nuance is exactly what disappears when sports controversies become tribal. Everybody starts defending a team instead of evaluating the specific evidence.
Look at this play. You're not going to say DJ's a clean player. Let's watch this on the close-up. An absolute hair pull. Well, this is the hair pull right here.
John.
What is that? So, I mean, this is not a skin color thing. She has a history of making dirty plays, and it's fine. The NBA, you can be a rough and tumble league. This is a very similar play to what she did to Caitlin, and it starts another little fight, the same exact reaction that Sophie Cutting.
Look at that.
Look closely at what is happening in that montage argument. Portnoy is not saying every single clip is equally severe. In fact, he admits one of the examples is less serious than others. That actually strengthens the useful part of the analysis, because a fair pattern argument should not pretend every incident is identical. Some plays are basketball plays with unfortunate contact. Some are borderline. Some look much worse in slow motion. Some receive flags. Some do not. The question is, what happens when enough questionable plays accumulate around one player? Fans begin judging the pattern rather than the isolated moment. We have seen this across sports forever. An NFL defensive back known for late hits gets less benefit of the doubt on the next collision. An NHL enforcer develops a reputation that follows him into every scrum. An NBA player known for flagrant fouls gets watched differently by officials and opponents. Reputation becomes part of the environment. That does not mean reputation should replace evidence. It means the player has to understand that every questionable play will now be magnified. Carrington is at that point, and if she wants the dirty player label to disappear, the only reliable way to kill it is not arguing with strangers online. It is going a long stretch without supplying new footage that critics can add to the compilation.
Anything after. So when you have commentators like Cheryl Reeves, who I like, L. Duncan, I'm putting some of the names down, who are like, conservatives are trying, an outside force trying to hijack the WNBA and trying to make everything about race and trying to make it a culture war. No, it's you. It's you guys. And I'm not saying specific, but yes, to Carrington, you specific. When you tweet something so stupid as white privilege, and then you get shocked when...
Now we get to the wider WNBA problem. Some voices around the league have argued that outside political forces are trying to hijack women's basketball and turn it into a culture war battlefield. There is clearly some truth to the idea that people who barely follow the games sometimes parachute into viral controversies because the political angle interests them more than the basketball. That happens constantly now, in every sport. But Portnoy's counter-argument is devastatingly simple. You cannot complain that outsiders are making a basketball incident about race, while ignoring the fact that a player involved publicly used the phrase white privilege. If league supporters want basketball to remain basketball, that standard has to work in both directions. You cannot demand that one political faction stay out while celebrating political commentary from people already inside the league. Either athletes are free to speak and outside audiences are free to respond, or everybody agrees that the court should remain separate from those arguments. What does not work is selective outrage depending on who introduced the politics, and Carrington had every right to post what she posted. Freedom to speak does not mean freedom from criticism. Once the statement is public, reporters and fans are allowed to ask what she meant and whether the claim makes sense. That is not hijacking the story. That is covering what happened.
People who aren't necessarily WNBA fans, and by the way, I was on the opposite side of this issue 2 weeks ago when Caitlin Clark didn't want to mention the trans issue that they asked her about when they should be allowed. She's like, I just want to play basketball. And all the people on the right, the conservatives, like, you got to stick up and call it a coward. Megyn Kelly's like, she's a coward for not talking. I told Megyn Kelly to shut up.
Yeah.
Like, you don't watch the WNBA. You don't watch basketball. You're inserting. But when you have one of your players who commits a clear flagrant 2 and then tweets white privilege right after she goes to the...
This is probably Portnoy's strongest point, because he uses his own recent position as evidence. He says that when Caitlin Clark was pressured to weigh in on another politically charged issue, he defended her choice to keep the focus on basketball. In other words, his standard, at least as he presents it here, is not that every WNBA player must speak politically. His standard is almost the opposite. If a player wants to play basketball and avoid a political fight, leave her alone. But if another player voluntarily injects a political or racial claim into a basketball controversy, then the resulting debate cannot be blamed entirely on outsiders. That distinction matters. Athletes should not be forced into becoming political spokespersons merely because reporters want a viral quote. But athletes who choose to make political statements are participating in the public conversation like everyone else. That comes with pushback. And the WNBA has become a uniquely combustible environment because its explosive growth has brought together audiences that do not share the same assumptions about basketball, politics, media, race, gender, or even what the league should represent. That is bigger than Carrington. She is simply standing in the center of the latest collision.
A locker
It's insanity.
room. You can't then cry that this is being talked about in racial terms in a culture. She started that. This is a basketball play. The second you go white privilege, and they are talking about it on these telecasts without mentioning what she tweeted. Oh, they're turning into a culture war, turning into a race war. This is our league. Don't let conservatives or the right hijack it. Your player tweeted white privilege, and it had nothing to do with that.
There is the payoff. The reason this story keeps expanding is not merely because Carrington committed a controversial foul. Hard fouls happen. It is not merely because Sophie Cunningham was involved. Players get ejected. It is not even merely because Carrington already had critics. The explosion happened because three separate things collided at exactly the same time. An already existing reputation for controversial physical plays, a high-profile incident people could replay frame by frame, and then a racial statement that transformed the meaning of the argument. That combination is gasoline, and once it happened, everybody saw what they wanted to see. People who already believed Carrington was reckless saw confirmation. People who believed she was unfairly targeted saw another example of disproportionate outrage. People who distrust sports media saw commentators avoiding the white privilege post. People who believe political outsiders are exploiting the WNBA saw another wave of personalities suddenly discussing a league they rarely cover. Everybody got evidence for their pre-existing worldview. That is why these stories become almost impossible to resolve. The argument is no longer over one foul. It becomes an argument about the league itself. But strip away every political layer for a second, and the basketball issue is still sitting there. What standard should the WNBA use when the same player repeatedly appears in controversial contact sequences? The answer cannot simply be social media thinks she is dirty. Social media is not an officiating department. The league has to evaluate actual plays independently. Was the contact unnecessary? Was it excessive? Was there a legitimate play on the ball? Did the player create avoidable danger? What penalties do the rules prescribe? Is escalation warranted for repeated behavior? That is how you protect credibility. Not by protecting Carrington because critics are loud, and not by punishing Carrington because critics are loud. Judge the plays, but judge all of them consistently.
Enough's enough. You are not some 6'8", 7-foot shot blocker. You're running around hitting multiple people upside the head. Enough is enough, bro. Stop it, man. This girl is a menace to the league. You're nowhere near the ball. You are, look, where's your hand? And the ball is all the way over here. You did this more than once in a single game today.
And that replay brings the conversation back where it belongs. The ball is one place. The contact is somewhere else. Viewers can see why the play triggered such a strong reaction. The strongest criticism of Carrington does not need exaggeration. You do not need to claim you know exactly what was inside her head. You do not need to turn every missed block into attempted violence. You do not need to pretend normal basketball contact never happens. Just show the footage and ask whether the contact was reasonably connected to a basketball play. That standard is tougher to dismiss because it does not depend on mind reading. And Carrington supporters should want that standard too, because if some of the viral clips really are being distorted, independent play-by-play analysis is the best way to prove it. Take each incident separately. A legitimate contest? Say so. A reckless swing? Say so. A flagrant foul? Call it. An exaggerated social media replay? Admit that too. Consistency is the only way out, because once fans suspect that a player is being protected or targeted for reasons unrelated to basketball, trust collapses.
Not a dirty player. She makes plays like this all the time. I put together a little clip of DiJonai Carrington, who is definitely one of the dirtiest players in the WNBA. I don't know if we can roll it, but she's taken her long fingernails. She's scratched Caitlin Clark's eyes out. This is an intentional play. I went nuts on it when it happened. I don't know if we're going to have the other angle. This is a dirty, dirty play.
This girl has so many of these type of plays. We can list so many players that she's just done dirty stuff to. DiJonai Carrington is not half as talented as Kennedy Carter.
That comparison to other players is where the discipline debate gets complicated. Portnoy argues that Carrington has enough incidents to justify treating her as one of the league's dirtiest players. That is his characterization, not an official league designation. But he is identifying the pressure point the WNBA will eventually have to confront if more incidents occur. At what point does repeated dangerous contact become a league-level issue, rather than a series of individual game calls? Most professional leagues have mechanisms that can escalate discipline. A single incident might produce an in-game flagrant. Repeated conduct can eventually bring fines, suspensions, or closer scrutiny, but those decisions have to be grounded in rules and documented conduct, not viral outrage. That protects everybody. It protects opponents from legitimately dangerous behavior. It protects Carrington from being punished merely because she has become unpopular with a segment of the audience. And it protects the league from looking like discipline changes depending on which side yells louder online. That last part is especially important for the WNBA right now. The league is attracting more attention than ever, and with more attention comes a harsher level of scrutiny. Every officiating decision is clipped. Every press conference becomes content. Every deleted post gets screenshotted. Every inconsistency is amplified. The old environment, where a controversial sequence might disappear after one news cycle, is gone. These moments live forever now.
It's disgusting. Let's get to what Dave Portnoy had to say here on Barstool in response to DiJonai Carrington. Okay, because he blasted. Not only did he blast Stephanie White, he blasted DiJonai Carrington.
And that is why Portnoy entering the story matters beyond whether you like him. Barstool reaches an enormous audience outside traditional WNBA coverage. Once a controversy jumps from basketball accounts into major national commentary platforms, the league loses control of the frame. Now people are not only seeing the official broadcast replay, they are seeing compilations. They are not only hearing analysts discuss whether a flagrant 2 was correct, they are hearing arguments about media bias. They are not only seeing Carrington as an athlete, they are seeing screenshots of her post alongside older clips. That is how a sports story becomes a cultural story, and whether the WNBA likes that attention is irrelevant. Once millions of new viewers become emotionally invested in its stars, rivals, officiating, and controversies, the league inherits everything that comes with major league visibility: more fans, more revenue opportunities, more scrutiny, more bad faith commentary, more legitimate criticism, more people watching every mistake. You cannot take the growth and reject the attention attached to it. The challenge is learning how to survive that attention without allowing every disagreement to become an ideological civil war.
Point.
Facts. Dave Portnoy was cooking with this one. Straight up cooking, man. DiJonai Carrington has been exposed. She's a menace to the league. She needs to be out of the league. She's flat out dirty. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think. This keep the video.
So has DiJonai Carrington been exposed, as the original commentary argues. The evidence supports a narrower conclusion than that phrase suggests. She has absolutely become one of the most scrutinized physical players in the WNBA. There are multiple public clips that critics point to when making the case that her contact crosses the line. The Cunningham incident intensified that reputation. Her white privilege post then transformed a basketball dispute into a much broader cultural fight. But the league should resist the temptation to adjudicate reputation instead of conduct. If Carrington commits another flagrant foul, punish that foul according to the rule book, and consider whatever escalation league rules permit based on the actual record. If she makes a clean defensive play, call it clean even if people online hate her. If commentators accuse her of something the video does not support, push back. If the video does support criticism, do not hide from it simply because the criticism comes from people the league dislikes. That is the standard. The bigger question now is what Carrington does next, because she cannot control the compilation videos that already exist. She cannot erase the Cunningham controversy. She cannot take back the fact that white privilege became part of the story. What she can control is the next game, and the game after that. The easiest way to change a reputation is to stop feeding it. If Carrington plays aggressive, effective defense without adding more shots to opponents' heads, more hairpull controversies, or more flagrant moments, this story eventually loses oxygen. But if another ugly replay surfaces soon, the reaction will be bigger than the last one because every previous incident will instantly return with it. That is the trap she is in now, and the WNBA is trapped right beside her. So choose your side on the actual basketball question. Are these clips enough to convince you Carrington deserves stronger discipline from the league, or do you think critics are combining unrelated plays to manufacture a reputation that goes further than the evidence? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you want more breakdowns where we separate the footage from the narratives surrounding it, like the video and subscribe to the channel.